trains, explosions, mutants, mercenaries, and Animal Crossing? All this and more coming up as we detail character creation and the opening to Fallout Red State. Hey all you heroes out there, I'm your professional protagonist and welcome back to Hell Yeah Gaming's Let's Make a Fallout Game, the series where I detail how I would build my own original game in the Fallout franchise from the ground up. We've previously discussed my personal experience with the series and what it means to me, the setting and themes, and the general mechanics. Now that the foundational groundwork has been laid out, we can finally begin with the beginning. Opening narration, character creation, the first seeds of the story, and the explosive call to adventure that pushes the character into said story. You'll find it right here. The game would open with a series of panning shots of various landmarks across the rocky wasteland, the area formerly known as Colorado. First, we focus on imagery of the destruction caused by the Great War. We'll get many shots of the various military bases from Fort Carson, Peterson, Fort Collins, with one shot of Cheyenne Mountain especially ravaged, lingering just a bit longer than the others to emphasize its importance.
War. War never changes.
That classic tagline comes in to start our opening narration. Even the depths of America's heartland couldn't escape the destructive reach of the Great War. When the United States traded nuclear fire with China, the sturdy mountains and the open plains offered no more protection than a backyard bomb shelter. They burned as well as any coastline city. Humanity survived, as it always does, in underground shelters known as vaults, biding their time until they could reclaim the surface to build society anew. Yet the challenges faced by these survivors would delay their inevitable society. That got you hooked yet? It's important to start with something familiar and lay the groundwork of the setting, establishing the Great War and the results thereof, just like all the previous entries, so that newcomers have something to go off of, while longtime fans can feel that familiar tone. But you can't just go old hat, you can't stay too familiar, or else that's just a rehashing what we already know. We can't bore the old guard with a recap, so it's vital to establish the hook in there quickly, which in this case not only serves to pull in interest, but to head off some potential questions about plot holes. A popular criticism of Fallout 3 is why, after such a long time, the capital wasteland is still completely wrecked with no signs of a larger unified society or government. This hook teases a deeper history to the region that can also answer such questions. So let's listen to the rest. First, it was the Blue Flu, also known as the New Plague. Despite Denver being home to a major research center engaged in finding a cure to this virulent disease, or perhaps because of it, the sickness had spread wide across the state, necessitating a longer lockdown from the survivors. During this time, packs of wild dogs began to thrive, growing feral, hunting down any source of food they could. Even so, some of the vault dwellers risked a new life on the surface, forming tribes with the descendants of those lucky enough to escape nuclear Armageddon above ground. All those extra generations spent underground gave other societies the time to build, to advance. These tribes were soon consumed by the mighty empire known as Caesar's Legion, stripped of all personal identity. Yet even the Legion was not insurmountable, and they fell against a greater force at the Second Battle of Hoover Dam. With the chain of command destroyed, the Legion fractured. Some groups remained loyal, Others attempted to reclaim their old tribe identities, but none had the organization to claim more than a small pocket of territory. Now it is the year 2290, 9 years after the momentous fall of Caesar, and civilization is ready to rebuild the Red State. Whether the differing peoples of the rocky wasteland will be unified, or whether they will be purged, is in the hands of one person standing in the crossroads of destiny. Bam! There's our opening narration. In it, we establish the relevant history of the setting, show off the state of the area leading up to the bombs, cover why the area is so poorly developed compared to Boston and the West Coast, tie in a little sprinkling of past lore without getting too detailed, and establish the importance of the player character as we lead to our first shot of them. That first shot would begin by hovering over a train station, zooming in into a waiting area just off the tracks, tying into the Crossroads of Destiny line, and pan across 4 different individuals sitting in that waiting area. A human, a ghoul, a super mutant, and a sentient Generation 2 synth. Think like Nick Valentine. Why are there 4 different races of people waiting beside this train station receiving equal camera attention when the narration calls out the importance of just the one player character? Well, we'll swing back to that in just a moment once you've subscribed to the channel and left a comment. Who knows, maybe you'll wind up the subscriber of the day like STM7810, who contributed to the last video by giving me a really good idea on how I could refine the power armor mechanics in a lore-friendly way. Thank you, STM7810. The reason the camera focuses on 4 different races at the opening of the narration is simple. It's time to get into character creation! Yes, that does mean that Red State would be giving the player the very long-anticipated, intensely desired, optional races! Much like how Fallout 4 gave you the choice between Nate and Nora, and allowed you to customize both their appearances before settling on one to play as. You'd be able to switch between the human, ghoul, super mutant, and synth, customizing all their appearances, then settling on which one you want to pick as your character. Naturally, there will be a stats impact in which race you choose, but I'll save those until they become relevant. What you would need to know from the gate is that your race will change how certain parts of the world see and react to you. Some factions would be inherently hostile to a super mutant, for example, while feral ghouls will never initiate an attack on a ghoul player, though they will defend themselves if provoked first and attack non-ghoul companions. For a super mutant player, this would also affect your equipment due to the sheer size of them. In exchange for the various benefits, you can never wear power armor, and small-sized weapons, like most pistols, are also unusable. Can't fit those big, meaty sausage fingers, you know. You'd still be able to wear regular armor and clothes, though, for gameplay convenience sake. I thought about requiring you to buy special mutant-sized armor, or having to invest materials and points into the Repairs Guild to repurpose normal clothes into mutant ones, but ultimately decided that would probably be going too deep and create a less fun, more frustrating experience. Once you've finalized your character appearance, the train station intercom will begin playing a message. Thank you for your patience. The Centennial Rocket is excited to have you as its first ever commercial passengers on its maiden journey from Pubtown to the Junction. Have your tickets at the ready and have a nice day. That's when the train doors open up, a conductor walks out, and you get in line with the other passengers. Or maybe you don't get in line. Maybe you faff around for a couple minutes, experimenting with the controls for a bit. Pick up some litter and throw it in the trash can, or at the people. Who am I to tell you what to do? It's a game about choices and consequences, after all. If you stick around too long, the conductor will try to hurry you along, impressing how they've got to stay on schedule. This isn't some video gamey, oh, take your time exploring the College of Winterhold, Alduin will put his world-ending threat on hold for you. Fake pressure, though. If you delay too long, they do close the doors and leave without you, leading to an entirely different beginning of the game, wherein you start in Pubtown and have to hear about the events you were meant to take part in secondhand. It's a much less exciting start to your adventure, but I digress. Assuming you behave as expected, the conductor will take your ticket, at which point the game would zoom in on it, and you now get to enter your name. Once that's confirmed, you're instructed to head to your seat, where you sit down and the game progresses. What follows next would be a cinematic experience of the train engine roaring to life, the whole car rattling, slowly accelerating. Out the window, you see a transition from the train station to the immediate area outside. Get a limited view of Pubtown as it transitions to the surrounding wasteland. I imagine this is a big showy moment of graphical fidelity by whatever next-gen hardware would be running the game, and world establishment. For comparison, think of it like the moment you step out of Vault 101 in Fallout 3, the shot of the mushroom cloud as you descend into Vault 111 in 4. But of course, this can't last. You still have a character to finish building, and I promised an Animal Crossing reference, didn't I? The player character's attention is suddenly taken by a new arrival sitting across from them, a human wearing a trader's outfit, curiously with a Pip-Boy on his arm. He introduces himself as Rover. If you know, you know. And I'm sorry, but with this setup, I just had to. Rover mentions offhand that he's relieved to have finally found his seat after the nightmare of getting his cargo aboard the Centennial rocket, then engages the player in casual conversation. First he asks where you're from, and this brings up the menu to select your traits. We would, of course, include the classics like heavy-handed, good-natured, etc., and it's only natural to develop a whole slew of new traits to be added to the pool. As with every previous game entry to include traits, you'll be able to pick 2, with a single exception. Fallout's tone has, of course, varied quite a bit from somber and serious to wacky and outlandish, oftentimes to a distracting degree. In New Vegas, they rectified this by offering up the Wild Wasteland trait at character creation so that the player could choose whether to include humorous references and Easter eggs or to have a straightforward, serious adventure. One problem, though, you still had to take up one of your 2 valuable trait slots for what was essentially just a tone change in a very small number of encounters. Therefore, in Red State, we'll include the Wild Wasteland trait, but it won't count towards your maximum, and would also probably rename it something more fitting for the region, since the Wild Wasteland kind of fit in with, a Wild West theme that New Vegas had. What will count towards your maximum traits are my new background traits. While all traits provide you with some sort of benefit and penalty inherent to the character, they're mostly physical traits inherent to your body or that could apply to just about anyone. They don't say much about where you came from. My background traits, of which each character can only choose one, would be designed to give the player additional roleplay opportunities along with the mechanical benefits, something to reflect where they came from or how they were raised. Some background traits would be universal, like Caravaneer, which would increase your carry capacity and, in hardcore mode, would reduce the food, water, and sleep needed. Others would be race-restricted, such as the Old School Ghoul, for a ghoul who's been alive since before the Great War, or Nightkin, for a super mutant that was part of the Master's original army. Ex-Brotherhood of Steel could give you power armor training out of the gate. Prototype would let a synth character access unique computer options as they sync with the machine. Vault Dweller could start you with some extra supplies. The possibilities are endless. And of course, every single one of these background perks would come with unique dialogue options throughout the game. We can even get more creative with it when you imagine some of the combinations you could make. Like, imagine a ghoul with the ex-Brotherhood of Steel background trait having a conversation with one of your companions. You get a dialogue option tagged XBOS, and select that, saying something to the effect of, "Well, back when I used to be in the Brotherhood, we'd handle this with a platoon of paladins packing Gatling lasers." Your companion expresses some surprise, saying, "Wait, you were in the Brotherhood of Steel? I thought those guys hated ghouls." Then in your next set of dialogue options, you get one tagged Ghoul, XBOS. And it says, "Yeah, hence the used to part. Your brain as smooth as your skin." If you have any ideas for background traits or fun dialogue possibilities, I definitely want to see them in the comments below. After your traits are decided, Rover would then say he has a fun idea to pass the time and offer to tell your fortune. He'll pull out one of those origami fortune tellers popular in grade schools. You know the one. This guy right here. And says he read about them in an old pre-war book that swears by these. The interface will change, focused on the fortune teller, and allowing you to toggle between the different paper tabs in order to assign your special points. These would be affected by your chosen race in various ways. Of course, being human is standard, but picking super mutant would automatically increase strength and endurance by 2, while charisma and agility would be reduced by 2. Ghouls would similarly increase their luck and endurance, with a decrease to charisma and strength. Lastly, a synth character would have an increase to intelligence and perception, while suffering a penalty to luck and endurance. The idea here is that super mutants are strong and hardy, but slow and off-putting. Ghouls were lucky enough to have that certain X factor that allowed them to mutate in radiation rather than die, and require less to survive, despite physically rotting. But that same rot makes them weaker and hard to talk to. Synths are designed to observe and analyze data quickly, but will wear down in time, and as a machine, arguably don't have that same hand in fate that we call luck. These changes don't just affect the character's baseline special. After all, that would be fairly pointless and be no different from moving a few points around before the player is allowed to then further rearrange point allocation. These changes would also impact the maximum and minimum caps of your special, meaning that a super mutant's strength and endurance can be as high as 12 and never be decreased below 3. That also means that their agility and charisma max out at 8 instead of the standard 10. But no need to worry about the minimum, that will never drop below 1. Once you've chosen your special and locked those points in, Rover puts away the paper fortune teller, seemingly pretty pleased with himself. After that, he says he's shown off enough of his own interests, so he wants to know what you like to do. No fancy interfaces or creative gameplay story integration here, just a simple, straightforward menu to select your 3 tagged skills. And once you do that, Rover expresses interest before winding down the conversation, mentioning how it's going to be a long ride to Junction. No sooner than the end of his sentence, everything goes to hell. The sound of an explosion. The train begins to shake violently. You go flying through the air in a cool cinematic of the train car spinning around you, experiencing being derailed in first person. You get banged around a bit. Then everything goes black when you collide with the window. You begin coming to with hazy vision. Fire and smoke nearby, a single crate a good few feet ahead of you. Your vision comes in and out in small flashes, and you see Rover desperately crawling toward the crate, reaching for it as it all goes black again. Then your vision fades back in. There's a human-sized figure standing over a motionless rover, smoking gun in their hand, boot resting on the back of his head. They appear to be wearing tactical armor and a helmet similar to the NCR veteran rangers, but a bit different. They speak, but it's through a voice changer, so there's no way to identify who they are.
Looks like I'm about to have a very happy client.
They reach down to the crate, leading to your vision fading out again. When it comes back in, the crate has been opened and ransacked. This is when the player gets back control of their character, getting up and able to move around. This is the tutorial portion of the game's intro, like escaping Vault 111 in Fallout 4 or getting lessons from Sunny Smiles in New Vegas. With the train having been completely derailed and blown up, the damaged cars serve to box the player in and force them into certain encounters to escape the wreckage. The area is being patrolled by low-level raiders, giving you a chance to either fight or sneak your way past them. There would be certain optional obstacles that would allow you to bypass portions of the wreckage by making use of certain skills, like lockpicking a closed train car door, or using the repair skill to unjam some metal blocking your path. But that's getting ahead of things just a hair. There are two very clear points of interest for the player to inspect once they have control: Rover's body and the crate. Approaching the two will lead to the player taking Rover's Pip-Boy, which will fit regardless of race thanks to the magic of science! The Pip-Boy will contain Rover's logs, including how he had been contacted by a man known as Mr. Clinton to deliver a list of goods, mostly basic supplies and salvaged parts, to the junction. Thus, the player has their initial story hook, that first lead to get them started on their quest. The second point of interest is, of course, the ransacked crate. Checking it will provide the player with their initial starting equipment. From there, you'll navigate out of the train wreckage, whether by sneaking, or fighting, or using your skills to escape the raiders, whose chatter seems to imply that they didn't have any part in the attack itself. They're just vultures seizing an opportunity to loot whatever they can. Once all the obstacles are cleared, you'll emerge out into the open on the train tracks to a grand vision of this new wasteland, with the screen evenly divided with the Rocky Mountains to your left and the wide open plains to your right. You have your first breadcrumbs to follow. You know the tracks south head back to Pubtown, while following them north will eventually lead to the junction. But you are now free to go anywhere. The game has officially begun. And there you have it, my friends, the opening moments and character creation of Fallout Red State. Obviously, some of this is wish fulfillment for myself and the fandom at large, like playing a race other than human and the background traits, but this project is wish fulfillment in itself. So what's the point if I can't have some unrealistic fun? Did the narration sound like something that you could hear in Ron Perlman's voice? Were the character creation interfaces creative and enjoyable? Did this opening give you a good understanding of the setting? And was the hook intriguing, with its dynamic action, mysterious assailant, and fun NPC intended to get you personally invested? Next time, we'll be taking a look at the various factions of the rocky wasteland that your character would meet and interact with. Until then, if you like this video, check out another one that'll pop up on screen right about now. And I hope the beginning of Fallout Red State gets your great big hell yeah!